All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am so happy to be here and honored to be here with you all and talking about workflows. So let me get a few moments while everyone gets in. If you can hear me, if you can see me, please let me know in the chat. That way I know that all systems are a go and we can continue on and press ahead. So let me know right there in the chat if you can see me and hear me. That would be fantastic. Awesome. All right. Welcome, everyone. It looks like people are trickling in right now. Awesome. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am honored to be here with you all today. My name is Becca, and I am the founder and CEO of Dubsado. And I am getting back into my old seat and doing this webinar. I used to do this all the time about 5 to 7 years ago when Dubsado first started. So I'm really honored to be back with you all and talking about workflows. This webinar is all about crushing confusion on workflows. I completely understand that getting started in Dubsado is a feat on its own, and there's lots of things that you need to do and getting your business processes in and learning opportunities all along the way. And then when you get to that workflows tab of Dubsado, it can feel daunting. And that's why I am here today to crush that confusion. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Just a few housekeeping things before we dive in. We will be recording this webinar. So within about a couple hours after this webinar, it will get emailed out to you. So don't you worry if you miss something, you happen to have to step away for a moment, maybe have to leave the webinar entirely. It will be emailed out to you. Also, the slides that I have with me today will be emailed with that as well. So don't feel like you have to take rigorous notes if it's something on my screen. I will be sending that out to you so that you have all the information that you need. So let's go ahead and dive right in. For those just tuning in right now, my name is Becca and I'm the CEO and founder of Dubsado. And today we are going to crush that workflow confusion. So let me go ahead and start sharing my screen so that we can dive right in. Give me 1 second while I get everything all situated. And additionally, before I forget, if you have any questions that you would like me to answer at the end of the webinar, go ahead and put them in the Q&A section of the chat, not the chat, but the Q&A. I will be answering those questions. Also, we have 2 people in here on the Dubsado team. We have Trevor, who will be answering questions that he thinks are great and easy questions that he can answer with you here in the Q&A on chat. And then we have Kristen here, who will help with all other questions and making sure that any questions that I do miss that Trevor might not cover and wants me to cover here, that I will get to them. So we have a few people helping me manage the chat over here. Okay. So let's go ahead and begin. This webinar is all about crushing your workflow confusions so that we can build successful workflows. So the goal of this webinar is to empower you to identify your processes and translate that to efficiently set up and automate some of your business processes using workflows, saving time, reducing manual effort, and enhancing client experience. Notice that I underlined some. I didn't say all of your business processes. This webinar is for the beginner just getting started. If you're like, oh shoot, I've been with Dubsado for a long time. I maybe already have a few workflows that I've started. I'm definitely not a beginner. There still might be some really good nuggets in here for you. We're going to break down business processes. We're going to break down Dubsado processes. We're going to go through all of the basics. And sometimes even as a very experienced Dubsado user, there might be some things that you will miss, that you have missed. I sent out, if you registered before Thursday, I sent an email out to everybody asking one simple question: what is your most confusing part about workflows in Dubsado? And an overwhelming response was, my process, how do I get started? So I've tailored this webinar to beginners, but it's going to touch a lot of things for those that might be a little bit more savvy in Dubsado. So let's hope that we all learn something new. So who is this webinar for? Today, we're just covering the basics of the workflow, but it's going to be super duper valuable. So it's great for those who haven't created workflows yet, those just getting started in Dubsado, those who have started workflows, but then maybe got a little bit overwhelmed and kind of was like, I can't do this anymore. And then those who just keep getting stuck. These are totally understandable things that happen. And we are going to make sure that we untie all those knots for you so that you can go ahead and get started. All right. So what is a workflow? Let's just dive into the very, very most simple thing. A workflow, basically in Dubsado, is an extra set of hands that can help do the work for you. And it's not just any set of hands. They are your set of hands. You are making your workflows. This is your assistant, your virtual assistant that you have programmed to do what you want it to do at the time that you want to do it. We've heard so many amazing success stories that Dubsado workflows have saved business owners lots of money because they didn't have to hire an extra assistant. They didn't have to go ahead and make that leap to get other employees just yet because workflows fulfilled that need. So we'll get there eventually, but I want to tackle those basics for you in this webinar. So when you are setting up workflows, this is a question for you all, and I'm going to ask you to put it in the chat. What are you specifically looking for when you're thinking about setting up workflows? What are you looking for it to do? Let me know in the chat. Are you looking for it to save time for you? Are you looking for workflows to help you grow your business so you can scale? Are you wanting to stop repetitive tasks? Is it to work less and be more with family? What is your goal in mind in wanting to set up workflows? I want to know so that we can just power through and continue on all of these. Yep, saving time, definitely. Growing your business, everyone is mostly saying all of the above. I love it. More automation. That's the beautiful part about workflows is it helps you save time on those repetitive tasks. Yes. All right. Staying consistent. I love that one. Staying consistent. I'm going to hang on to that as we go into this next slide. Awesome. Love all these answers. So one of them, and staying consistent kind of hits the nail right on the head there, is client experience. That is one of my most favorite part about workflows is creating a cohesive client experience. Client experience is one of my most favorite things in business. It's something that you can absolutely control. It's something that really makes your clients feel special. It makes you feel like you're on top of things. Client experience is the gold mine of running a business. So within Dubsado, workflows can help your client experience by keeping you staying on top of things, making sure that nothing falls through the cracks. But maybe you're not sure how to take the day-to-day stuff of running a business and putting it into a system. That's why maybe when you open the workflow tab of Dubsado, you're like, oh gosh, I hit a wall. I have no idea what to get right up here in my head and translate that into words in Dubsado. Maybe they're not the same words that you use. That's the most common thing I see breaking down when people open that templates and workflows tab and it's like, oh gosh, where do I begin? Yeah, I'm getting some yeses here. So this webinar is about getting unstuck. And towards the end, we will get into Dubsado and we will start building out a workflow. Very basically, how do we start a workflow? What is the difference between sending an email versus sending a form? I send an email when I want to send a form. So we're going to answer all those questions and help you get past those friction points. And mostly, we're going to get that process that you have up here in your head down on paper and then into Dubsado. Lots of steps, but workflows are important. So in that email that I sent out to everybody who registered before Thursday, I asked, what is the places that you're getting stuck? And most of the time where we see people getting stuck are our Dubsado customer care team. And what I saw in those email responses that I received back is, where do I start? What is my process? What can I automate? I don't even have my template set up. So how can I begin to automate? That's probably why you're getting in there and getting confused. I'm too busy. Oh, I hear that one a lot. I am too busy. That's why you need workflows. 100% why you need workflows. My process is too complicated. I don't know how, and I don't know where to get started. So all of these kind of focus on one central theme. And even places like I'm too busy or I don't know how, it focuses on knowing your process. It all boils down to knowing what your process is, not the Dubsado process, not workflows in Dubsado. It's knowing your business process and what you do at every step of the way in your business. So in order to do that, we need to identify your process. You must know what your phases of business are. Yeah, isn't that Dubsado bag cool? I liked it too. Sorry, I'm trying not to read the comments, but I like that bag too. Your goal in this webinar will be to identify your business processes, and that will be the biggest win out of this webinar so that you can go in and start building your Dubsado workflows. So yes, many people who have different services, and it doesn't matter what business that you're in or what industry, pretty much all businesses and all industries that you might work in focus on about 3 different phases of business processes. You have your inquiry, when your client's like, I'm interested, maybe they're a lead at that time. Then they go into their booking with you. Maybe that they're not required as a project just yet. They're not a full client. Then they go into the phase of being booked and then offboarding. Those are kind of the 3 business phases that we're going to focus on when we're going to be identifying what goes into your workflows. So we're going to commonly refer back to this phases of your business so that you can help identify what your workflow functions are. And why this is so important. Some of this might look a little bit familiar to you all if you've been in Dubsado and been poking around in there. This is the projects page of Dubsado. And these right here are the project statuses. I could do a whole webinar on projects and how to use them and how to use them with repeating clients and how to use them with making sure that you have different industries and different services that you provide and how this all translates into Dubsado. I can do a whole nother webinar on that. But for now, I'm just going to focus on workflows and how workflows relate to these projects. So I completely understand that running a business under the same flow, maybe you run a few different services under one umbrella, all of that stuff. Don't get too carried away with that right now. In this webinar, I want you to focus on just one service that you do, focus on one tiny little aspect so that we don't have to feel overwhelmed trying to, how do I do all of it in Dubsado? Let's pick one thing. Let's focus on one thing. So there's so many ways that you can categorize how your projects page looks in Dubsado. I have an example here on what that phases of business process funnel looks like on the projects page. So maybe there's a couple of steps that you have for your client in the lead phase. They're inquiring with you. Maybe they have to you have to check your calendar for availability. Maybe you have to do a few calls with them. They're still not a qualified lead just yet. Then they go into the booking phase. Then they go into an actual booked client phase. So throughout this webinar, we're going to be talking about these 3 things and move them down the pipeline, move them down these project statuses. Another reason why I'm showing you this page is projects are a must in Dubsado. If you want to automate things, if you want to have payment reminders go out, if you want to have workflows go out, you must set up a project in Dubsado. Dubsado is 100% project based. This is why I can do a whole nother webinar on projects and how to use them with your different types of clients. But if you want to automate and if you want to use workflows, diving in and learning how to use projects is a must. So we're going to touch on projects for just a little bit for the sake of creating workflows in this webinar. All right. So how do you create a project? You can create a project through a lead capture form. So a lead capture form is that contact form on your website that you create it in Dubsado and then you embed it on your website. It's that contact form. And as soon as the client fills that out, they can be automatically entered into Dubsado. So that's one way that Dubsado can create a project for you automatically. Another way that Dubsado can create a project for you is through a public proposal. A proposal is that, I like to call a proposal like a menu of all of your services, and your services are those food options that people go through and pick and choose what they want. Public proposals embedded on your website are a wonderful way if you have not very customizable services and people can just book whatever they see and then be qualified already as a booked and paid client. So public proposals are another way to automatically do that. Zapier, I can do a whole nother webinar on Zapier. You can have other places, maybe they're signing up for a course on your Kajabi account. And as soon as they sign up for that course, they want to, you want to automatically get them in Dubsado. You can do that through Zapier. And of course, you can create a project manually. So these are 4 ways that you can create projects in Dubsado. But for this webinar today, we're only going to focus on these 2. These 2 types, you can have a workflow automatically fire off from these 2 options. A lead capture form can get a little bit more specific on what you want to fire off. So both lead capture forms and public proposals can have one workflow send out as soon as the client fills that out. So you can get that workflow going on those forms automatically, which is amazing. And it saves time because you don't have to go in and manually do anything. That workflow just automatically applies for you. I'm going to show you how to do this a little bit later in the webinar. But the lead capture form can go one step further, and it can have a drop down of choices that your client can choose from. And it, depending on the choice that they choose, it can send that specific workflow. So say you are a coach and you don't have one specific workflow that you want to send off for every client that inquires through your lead capture form. Maybe you have a 6-month coaching program, you have a year coaching program, and maybe you have some other type of service. You can have those in a drop down, and based on what your client chooses, it can fire off a workflow for them. So I'm going to show you how to do that as well. That's great if you offer different types of services. So let's figure out how we can actually translate this and get it in Dubsado. It all starts with determining what your process is. So this is some homework I have for you. I'm not going to have you do it right now because I want you to focus on the rest of the webinar, but here's some homework I have for you. After this webinar, or if you're watching the replay, you can pause and do this right now. You're going to write everything down you can think of as part of your process. I mean, everything. And then I want you, then when you can't think of anything else in your process, then I want you to write down everything you want to send to your clients in creating a great client experience. Sometimes you have your process, but maybe it's not exactly what you want. I want you to do this in phases. First, write down what you do right now. Then in the next phase, go through and write down what you want to do. What is that extra cherry on top, those little sprinkles that you want to sprinkle in there to make sure you have a really great client experience? In that last part, that's where I really like to dream about that perfect client experience. And in this process, don't be afraid of like, oh, this can't be automated. I'm not sure if I can do this. Don't worry about automating things. The goal is right now is to just get it down on pen and paper, and don't worry about, oh, I'm not sure if I should automate this or not. Nope. We are not thinking about automation here. We are just thinking about your process as a whole. So what if your process, your perfect process, what does it look like? Write it down. Write it down. There are so many. I know some of you might be thinking, but wait, I offer so many different types of services. I can't just have one workflow. I know where your minds go. My mind goes there too, thinking of every single edge case. This is what I have for you. This is a little tip. Start small. I said this earlier in the webinar. When you're trying to figure out which workflow process to write out, start with your shortest, your most familiar, and your most popular. I don't want you, when you're writing this exercise down and doing all of that, I don't want you to think about anything else. Pick your shortest, your most familiar, and your most popular. Then once you figured that out, you're going to do that again with another one and then another one. Don't try to do it all at once. I guarantee you will get overwhelmed. So I think that's where you might be getting overwhelmed too. So a workflow, when you are building it out, it doesn't need to be a crazy workflow. It doesn't even need to have all the bells and whistles to start. Workflows in itself are that extra cherry on top. 100%, you don't need workflows to run your business. That might be controversial for me as a Dubsado CEO and founder coming up here saying, you don't need workflows. You don't. but it's that extra cherry on top. It's that extra thing that enhances your client experience. This is what I tell people when I find they're getting stressed out about workflows and all of that is that it is extra. You're still going to be able to book clients. You're still going to be able to do things even if you don't have a workflow. So once you've really nailed down your processes, that's when you should start getting into a workflow. So when you're writing out your processes, I want you to think of these 3 things in each step. And again, you're going to have these slides after the webinar so that you can take this back as prompts and everything of how you're going to be writing it out. But I want you to think about when you're writing it out, what you want to do, when you want it to happen, and which piece of content you need. I know some of you might be thinking, oh gosh, content. I forgot about content and all the emails I need to write and all the forms I need to get in Dubsado. I have a solution for you on that too. So this will be great for after the webinar. When you are writing down your process, here are some prompts that I have in case you're getting stuck and can't figure out where to go. I have some questions on your inquiry phase, your booking phase, and your booked phase to help you write out those processes. So what is the very first thing that should happen when a lead comes in? That's where you're going to get your process for your workflow for your inquiry phase. Then what are the next steps to get them booked? Are you sending them a proposal? Are you sending them a questionnaire? What are you doing? Then when do you consider the client to be booked? Is it when they pay an invoice? Is it when they schedule a meeting with you? What qualifies that? Is it signing a contract? Once a client is booked, then what happens next? What do you do with them? Do you send them more questionnaires? Are there things that it's waiting on? When your work with the client concludes, then what happens? Then do you send any follow-ups after the work has ended? So hopefully these prompts will help you work through writing down your processes when you're translating it. All right, and I know some of you will go here asking about all these what ifs and conditional logic and all of that. I get this way I get this way as well. What if? What if my client doesn't sign the contract? What if they answer no on this question? What if? If there is a fork in the road when you are writing out your process, remember I said keep it simple, keep it basic. You're just going to answer yes. When you're writing down your process, the answer for all those forks in the road is yes. What if the contract isn't signed? Okay, well, what if the contract is signed? Go through it that way in the positive way, and then you'll go back and create another written process for the no's. But for now, I want you to start with yes. Yes, if they sign the contract. Yes, if they pay the invoice. Yes, if they complete the proposal. Again, starting basic. But it'll help you get in the right headspace and actually get those thoughts that are up here in your head down on your paper. And that's the most important part of getting unstuck. Sometimes it's all about the mind space. It's all about that mental space that you are getting in. So I have 4 tips before we start getting into the nitty-gritty of building workflows. Number 1 of mindset, man, that's hard to say, tips when building workflows. Number 1, if you don't have a business process written out and identified, like truly identified, you will have no workflow. That's why it's so important to write it down. As basic as it sounds, it's important. Number 2, your workflow is a living process. It's always going to change, and that's okay. You are going to build this workflow, and guess what? Next month, it's going to change. You're going to add a few things. You might remove a few things. That is okay. Workflows are not a set it and forget it. Number 3, there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all workflow. I understand that some of you all really would love some examples on workflows and just copying them to your account. We can't do that right now because it's not possible. But even if that was possible, there isn't a one-size-fits-all workflow. So what someone else's workflow isn't necessarily going to fit for you, because you're going to have different processes and different ways that you're going to check in with your client. You're going to have your own amazing client experience, and your client experience is going to be different than someone else's client experience. That's what makes your business special. And number 4, your workflow works to the level of your Dubsado knowledge. If you are a very beginner Dubsado user, that's totally fine. Your workflows are going to be very new and very simple. And that is what's beautiful about it, because it fits where you are right now. So I don't want you to feel overwhelmed and inundated. Well, what the heck is this action? And what is this trigger? How can I use that? Start with what you know in Dubsado and use that. And then as your Dubsado knowledge grows, you can go back to your living workflow process and plug more in as the more you learn about Dubsado. So it's a living process. Don't feel like it's set in stone right now. All right, who's ready to get into the nitty-gritty of workflows? Let's go. Okay, so in workflows, we have each step of a workflow is made up of an action and a trigger. The workflow action tells you what you want the workflow to do. What do you want it to send? What do you want it to do? And the trigger is the when. It tells that action when you want it to run. So in a workflow, you must have an action, aka the what, and the trigger is the when. You must have these two items in your workflow. So how does that look like written out? So here we have some actions on the left, sending an email and sending an appointment scheduler. And on the right, you see the triggers. So we are going to send an email after the client books. And then you can either set this for maybe after the contract is signed or after the payment is made, whatever it might be. Then we are going to send a scheduler after a call or after the form has been completed. So this is what an action looks like, and this is what a trigger looks like. Also, look at how different the words are. The white is maybe what would come out of your mouth and what you would write on your business processes. And the green or that little teal is what it says in Dubsado. And this is why it's so important to have your workflow processes written down. Because if it's up in your head, it's like send welcome email. I don't see send welcome email. It's just send email, but it becomes a little bit more clear if it's written down. So that's why we wrote it out that way, because it's like you wrote it out, and then a little bit under there is what it says in Dubsado. All right. So this is so important, especially as you start building workflows. You might be thinking, I don't have any of my forms built yet. I don't have any of my canned emails built yet. So I definitely can't build my workflow. I can't even start. You can start. This is another blocker in getting started in workflows, but I have a very, very simple fix for you. And I hope it helps you just as much as it helps other people. So if you don't have, when you're building a workflow in Dubsado, you will need to select emails and forms and questionnaires or schedulers to tell the workflow to send that. And since we're taking your client experience up a notch, hopefully getting all your hopes and dreams down there written in your process, you might not have 100% of all the pieces built out in your workflow just yet. Or if you're just beginning, maybe you have nothing built out in Dubsado just yet. Totally cool. That's fine. You don't have to be held back by that. So what we are going to do when we are after this webinar and you're building your workflows is you are going to create placer templates. Those are going to be the bones of your workflow. So if you know, this clip is just running through some placer templates. As you can see in this one, it's typing a canned email. What does it say? Yeah, fun header here. It's just typing out what your email is, but you know that there is an email that needs to go here. What the placer template is, it's not the real email. It's just saying like, this is the send welcome email. I know I need to come back here, but just get it in there so that after you have that process built out, then you can go back and start filling things in. So with placer templates, the pieces that you do have ready, of course, you can apply those in your workflow. You don't have to create placer templates if you already have your contract or if you already have stuff like that. But placer templates will help you build out your workflow in Dubsado without getting stuck, and they'll make it easier for you to connect the dots between workflow actions. I will say, if you don't have your forms and contracts and all of that set up when you're building a workflow, it can be daunting to then have to go back to the forms page, to go back to the canned emails page. Creating placer templates will help you not be so scattered and be able to just focus there all at once. Then after you've built your workflow, you can go back into your workflow template and change the form, plug in those real things for you. All right, next, before we dive in and start looking in Dubsado, there are a few things that you will not put in your workflow. And those are going to be three things. Form completion reminders. So if you need to remind your client to fill out a form that's about to expire or remind them of forms, you're not going to put those in your workflow. Payment reminders. So if an invoice is coming up and you want to remind them of a deposit that's due, that's not going to go in your workflow, and appointment reminders for your scheduler. The reason why you're not going to put these in the workflow is because these reminders are natively on those items themselves. So your form completion reminders are going to be in the settings of that form. They are around that template. So your form completion reminders, your payment reminders are on your invoice. That is your invoice payment reminders. And then you have your appointment reminders that will be set up through your scheduler. So these are all set up on those items themselves and not through a workflow. All right, let's continue on. Yes, the placer templates, I just see a question before I continue on. Those placer templates are just temporary forms and they're not the real ones. Once you have the real forms, then you can plug them into your workflow. We're not going to be setting this live. We're not going to be setting this temporary workflow live right now. So yes, these are the items that you won't put in your workflows. And it is another spot where I see people getting tripped up of like, I don't see an action to remind somebody to pay their invoice. Well, you don't see it because it's on the invoice itself. It's on the form itself, and it's on the scheduler. I could do another webinar all on that. So many webinars, so many opportunities. All right. Remember this one that we went to? We talked about a lead capture form triggering a workflow, and then the workflow element that can trigger multiple workflows. We talked about that. And then we talked about the public proposal. So I'm going to go into Dubsado right now, and I'm going to show you how you can start a workflow from these two items, from a lead capture form, a public proposal. And I'm also going to show you how to set up a workflow manually as well, since some of you might not be having a workflow trigger from a lead capture form or a proposal. So let me get my screen adjusted and let's go into Dubsado and set up a few things. Give me 1 second while I adjust everything right now. Let's see. Let me go back to my camera. I am going to share. Okay, give me 1 sec. I have 2 monitors, which means double the confusion about what's happening here. Okay, now let me go back up here, share my screen. Okay, perfect. So let me know if you can see my Dubsado screen right here. Let me know in the chat before I continue on. Can you all see my screen? My Dubsado, it looks like, okay, cool. All right, so this is inside your Dubsado account. So first, we are going to talk about how to add a workflow to a project manually. Some of you might be doing this if maybe your client emails you outside of Dubsado, or you saw them at a coffee shop and you're like, yeah, I already have you as a client. Let me get you in your workflow started. This is how you can start a workflow manually. So you're going to go into projects, because Dubsado is project based and you can't fire a workflow off without a project. So we're going to go into projects here. And of course, my computer is running nice and slow. Give me 1 second. I can hear it like overheating. Let me log in first. That would help. All right. So let us dive right in. Let me stop sharing right now while I get myself adjusted here. Okay. Looks like I am back in business now. Let me go back and start sharing my screen again. I'm at the furthest side of the office, and sometimes the internet doesn't reach here very well. So here we are. We're back. We're back and firing on all cylinders. All right. So we're going to fire a workflow off manually. We're going to go into projects. And once you're on the projects page, whatever funnel that you're in, whatever it is, you're going to click into your project or create a new project if you haven't created a project already. And then you're going to go to the workflows tab and simply apply your workflow and click apply. And this manually is applying the workflow to your project. So the send email, the send contract, send form will all get sent to my client automatically because I manually applied the workflow. So that's number one, manually applying a workflow. Then I would like to talk about those two options of a lead capture form and a public proposal. So let's dive into the lead capture form. This is the one that has those two cool options in it. So let's go into templates and forms. And then I'm just going to go to a lead capture form that I already have set up. Your lead capture forms, if you don't have them already, lead capture forms are those contact forms that you embed on your website. As soon as a client fills out this form, they're automatically entered into Dubsado for you. So with a lead capture form, if you go into settings, you can have it. I already have a workflow applied here. Let me just remove it. Over here on the left-hand side, you're going to click this drop down to apply a workflow if you want it to. So for example, 6-month coaching, I'm going to have it as soon as my client fills out this lead capture form, then it's going to send them my 6-month coaching workflow, and it is going to get them in that workflow process and start firing off the emails that I have set up for them right away. But if I want to go one step further, so let me remove this. If I want to go one step further, and maybe I have different services or different types of workflows depending on the client that I have, I can go into, and this is special just to the lead capture form. On the Elements tab over here on the left, there's a workflow element, and I'm going to click and drag this into my lead capture form. And I can customize what this question says, but on all of these options, you see that there's a way that I can type in different options. So I think I remember there's a 6-month coaching program, and I select the workflow. So these are options that my client's going to choose. I think there was a 3-month coaching option on there. Of course, you can make it sound a lot better. Or maybe they just have a general question. All right. And then I can apply a general inquiry on there. So this is giving my client 3 options that they can choose from. And what this little drop down is, it's all my workflows that I have created. So if my client chooses general question, my general inquiry workflow is going to fire for them, which is completely different than my 3 months coaching or my 6-month coaching workflow. So depending on the option that they choose, it will fire off a different workflow. So this is perfect for people who have different services and different phases and stuff like that. It gets a little bit more specific. So I'm going to save this form. So those are the 2 ways that you can have maybe just one workflow fire off or one default workflow fire off on your lead capture form, and then you can get a little bit more specific with the workflow element. Additionally, we talked about public proposals have the ability to also fire off workflows. So as you know, in Dubsado, there are proposals. We have private proposals, and then we have public proposals. Private proposals do not create a project. Private proposals are great. They're all just listed under this proposal category, and it's just turned public or private with a flick of a switch right down here. So I'm in a proposal, I'm in the settings, and as you can see right here, I have a toggle of, as you read right here, it says create a new project once a proposal is completed. If I mark yes, it's going to create a new project just like a lead capture form does as soon as a client fills out this proposal. So public proposals are amazing for embedding on your website, or if you want to send it through text message or something like that. That's what public proposals are great for, because as soon as the client fills that out, it creates a project. If you already have a project created for this client, you are not going to want to have this option on. So you can turn that off. So we're not going to be talking about private proposals right now. We're going to be talking only on public proposals. So both public proposals and lead capture forms, yes, you can create those in Dubsado and embed public proposals and lead capture forms on your website. These things are not created on your website. They're created in Dubsado. And then using the share option, you can embed it on your Showit, your Squarespace, Webflow, WordPress, whatever you have. You can embed these on your website and your clients can fill them out. So with the lead capture, or with the public proposal, if you go into form settings again, and you have this create new project once proposal is completed on, you can apply a workflow to trigger. So your client will fill out this proposal and whatnot. And as soon as they figure it out, I was reading something on here. And as soon as they complete this proposal, then they will get sent the workflow that you have set over here on this side. Additionally, and one step further, when we talked about project statuses and them going into a project status on both lead capture forms and public proposals, you can have it go into a status that's on your project page. So that bar of items with all the emojis and that inquiry, booked, and offboard phase, this is where you can put them in automatically. So you can do that on a public proposal and a lead capture form as well. All right, so those are how you can start a workflow off automatically. So let's go into how we can build the workflow to actually have it start automatically. So let's go into, I don't want to save this. I'll save it, whatever. So let's go into building a workflow and how we can get that workflow started. So go into templates and workflows. And now when we go here, we're not going to get confused. We're not going to be stuck because we've already written our processes down after this webinar. So I'm going to go into adding a workflow. Let's just remove this one since I'm going to call it that. Let's go into add workflow. And I'm going to call this just basics. And here we are. We're in the building phase of our workflow. With this, what you have written down on your pen and paper, you're going to make it a workflow. Not everything that you write down on your pen and paper is going to be translated into creating a workflow. This exercise wasn't just for creating workflows. It was to identify your process, and then you're going to pick and choose the items that you think that you can automate right now. Maybe not everything can be automated. Maybe only 5 items on your list can be automated. Maybe only 1 right now can be automated. That's totally fine. If one thing is automated, then that saves you, and that one thing before took you 5 minutes to do, that saves you 5 minutes per every client. So once you have your process written down, don't feel like you have to get it all into Dubsado, but most likely, if you are having a workflow start, you're going to want it to send an email right away to your client, or a form right away to your client after they filled out the lead capture form or filled out the public proposal. And the most common question I get is, how do we start a workflow? What is that first action and trigger? And what should that be? So we're going to go ahead and add action. So if you are applying this workflow manually to a project, on a lead capture form, or on a public proposal, let's say I want to, as soon as someone fills out my lead capture form, I want it to send them an email saying, hey, I'm going to get back to you within 24 hours. So thank you for contacting me. Obviously, it's going to sound better than what I'm writing here. Blah, 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 whatever your email is going to say. What you're going to do is it's going to be 0 days after workflow has started. That's going to be your trigger for getting that workflow started. And your workflow is started by a client filling out a lead capture form, or a client filling out your public proposal, or you starting it manually by adding it to a project. But this action, 0 days means immediately, right away. That means this workflow is going to fire as soon as it gets added to a project manually or automatically. So 0 days after workflow started means that this email, thank you for contacting me, is going to send right away to the client. So what we're creating right now is your workflow template that you're going to use to apply everywhere. This is going to get applied to all clients. A really great thing when you are building out your workflows and sending emails and stuff like that is using your smart fields. These smart fields down here allow you to add in your client's name. One worry that I see a lot of people very intimidated about in workflows, and I didn't talk about this before because I'm going to crush that worry right now, is workflows are impersonal. They might sound robotic. I don't want people to think that I'm not taking care of them. You can absolutely personalize your items as much as you want, as little as you want. So you can do that by adding smart fields. So smart fields are see, it's hi, client first name. So whatever the client's first name is, because they filled out the lead capture form, it's going to have their name on it. It's going to have stuff like that on it. It's going to say, so say I'm filling this out. It's going to say, hey, Becca, because I put the smart field in there. So you don't have to always just have it say like, hi there, or something very impersonal. You can customize things. And based on where you are in the client journey, maybe you want to send a smart field on the invoice total, if you're just wanting to loop back and remind them what that is, or how much they've paid already. There are so many smart fields that you can pull from to make it personal. In addition to the worry that I hear about workflows being impersonal, is the ability to customize things even further. Maybe smart fields don't fill in all of the blanks that you would like to customize. You can click this little button right here that says require approval before completing this action. And what this simple button does is it will not automatically send this until you have said it's okay to. So what this will do, as soon as this action fires off, if you have this checkbox checked, is it will send you an email saying, hey, Becca's project over here needs to be approved before this workflow sends off. Maybe you just want to double check that all the contents of the email is correct. That email will give you a link to that workflow so you can go in and you can approve that workflow item or not. And you can do this on all the actions that show that this option. You can do this on send forms. You can do this on sending emails. So if you want all of your workflows to require approval before it sends, you can do that. This is great for beginners in workflows who don't necessarily trust that they set it up right. And we'll get into testing workflows in just a few moments. So just wanted to throw that option out there for those that want that as well. So when you have that checkbox checked, it's going to send you an email, and it's also, let me go out of the workflow real fast. It's going to show up on your dashboard when you log in. See, right now I have one workflow action that needs approval. I've already gotten the email about that, but I can go in and check here and see everything and all the jobs that I have that require my workflow approval. I think I removed this workflow right now. Oh yeah. So this is a workflow that required my approval. So this email, I'm like, let me make sure it's all set up right. Let me see everything's good. Let's see. Okay, yep, this is great. Make sure that's good. And I just click approve. And that will approve that action to go ahead and send off to my client. Okay, let's go back to the workflow and talk about another confusing part, or another part where I see people getting confused and making them stop building workflows. And that is, I'm just looking at my notes here, making sure I'm covering everything. That is the send email versus send form. So I talked about it a little bit before. When you want to send a form to your client, yes, that is going to be delivered by way of email, but you're not going to select the send email action. Send email is just great for words that you want to send your client. But if you want to send your client a form or a scheduler or something that is going to be delivered via email, then you will click send form or send contract, send invoice, all of that. These are the items that you're going to want to choose. So for example, on send form, you can choose if you want it to send an email, just apply to the portal, or just apply to the project. So by selecting send form, it is essentially going to send your client email. So that's where I see people getting confused a little bit is, yes, I want to send a form, but I also want to send an email, and they click the send email action instead of the send form. So if you're sending contracts, sending lead capture, sending schedulers, sending proposals and whatnot, be sure to choose that action here instead of send email. So that's a confusing part, where I see people getting confused. So make sure to use its specific action instead of just send email. So that's the same thing with appointment scheduler. That's another spot where I see people getting tripped up a little bit. Sending an appointment scheduler, you get to choose the scheduler template that you want to send, but it will also send an email. Same thing with PDFs. You're going to send a form, and then you're going to choose the template that you want to send. If you have a PDF uploaded in your templates area of Dubsado, so under templates forms, your PDF will show here, all of that. So that is done through the action itself. Think about the item that you are wanting to send. And if you're not sending any items at all, it's just going to be a send email action. So again, there are 3 things. Remember those 3 things I saw in the comments that a lot of you, sorry, my face, I have like a hair in my eye and it's been annoying me this whole entire webinar. So that's why I'm touching my face. Remember, there are 3 things that a workflow will not send. And that is the invoice reminders, scheduler reminders, and form reminders. I'm not going to go into all of those, but I did just want to show you what I'm talking about on one of those first. So say in your workflow, so let's add action. I'm going to have the action send form. As soon as the workflow started, I'm going to send my getting to know you questionnaire. So I'm going to apply that. Perfect. I'm going to have that go out. If I want to make sure that my client fills this out before the next steps of my workflow, that is done specifically on the form or the scheduler or the invoice itself. So for example, on a form, I'm going to go into templates, then forms, and let's just go to the getting to know you questionnaire. I think that was the one I was working on. You're going to go into settings, and then you can set expiration dates. And this means that this form has a due date on it that is, let's see, after the project is started, which the workflow will start the project, it is due, let's say, 10 days after my workflow or my project has started. And I want to add an email reminder letting them know that it's due. If it hasn't been filled out, it will send out these reminders. If your form has been completed, do not worry. It will not send these reminders. That's the same thing with invoices as well. If your client has paid installments of the invoice that you have reminders set up on, it will not send those reminders. It will only send if your client has not paid or completed this form. So these are all those 3 things that I mentioned, and I'll send you the slides on the webinar replay. So when you're building out your workflows, do not include reminders on those items. All right. So that is that. I'm just looking at my notes. In just a few moments, I'm going to get into Q&A. So if you have any questions that have not been answered, Kristen, can you, I'll look at the thread. Thank you, Trevor and Kristen, for helping out here. The next question that I got a lot in the email that I sent out to you all is, how do you test a workflow? That's a really great question, because workflows can have a lot of steps that are dependent on paying an invoice or booking your scheduler or all of these things that you're not necessarily going to be paying your own invoice. So how the heck can you test that? What you're going to do, and let me just go to a project really quickly. Let's go to, I know someone asked, what is that blue dot on the project? I have emojis that I use in my project titles. It's just another way. You, of course, can use tags in your project, but I like to use emojis in my project titles, depending on, it's just another way to like color code what your clients are doing. See, this is why I want to do a projects webinar. There's a lot of tips and tricks on projects. But right now we're testing our workflows. So I'm going to go into my workflows tab, and let's see, this action should send in about 30 minutes, it looks like. I don't want to wait 30 minutes. I'm testing my workflow out right now, and I want to make sure it sends and fires off and everything is good. And I want to see that email. I want to look at it on my phone. I want everything to function as it should. So what I'm going to do is you are just going to click Force Now. Force Now makes that action fire right away. It makes that action not wait for the time it has specified, but it will force that action to happen immediately. So essentially now this email will be, after I click Force Now, this email will be firing off right now. Additionally, other actions that you have in your step. Oh, looks like my email's wrong. That's why it's giving me an error. nice example of an email, what it looks like if your workflow has an error. Looks like my email is incorrect. Yes, it is incorrect because that is not a real email. When you are testing your workflows, you can just go through and click force now on the actions that you want to fire off and test it out on your phone. And if that was a real email, I would have received it in my email and I could look at it that way. So you're just going to go through and click force now for all those actions, including your invoices. So it will act like that invoice is being paid. If it is waiting on an invoice being paid, you can just go through and manually add an amount to your invoice, stuff like that, just to test it all out. Really quick before I answer questions, in any action that you have, like say you have your workflow applied to your project, you can edit items right here and it will not touch your workflow template. So we created workflows and templates in workflows, but once anything is applied to a project, it only changes it on that project. So after a workflow gets automatically applied or manually applied, you can go through and edit things if you want to, and it only affects the workflow template that you have applied to your project. So if I wanted to just go through and change something right here, blah, 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 whatever it is, it will only change for this client, Joe Smith. All right. Perfect. And of course, you can add more actions and stuff like that. You can even add more workflows if you want to. You don't just have to have one workflow on a project. I've seen people do workflows in phases. So remember, we had that inquiry, booking, and booked phase. Some people I've seen have 3 separate workflows for things like that. It totally depends on your process. There is an action in the workflow to start another workflow. So you can definitely, after they finished out something, you can have it start another workflow. That is a complete possibility as well. All right. So we've tested workflows. We've gone through the basics. We learned how to start a workflow. We learned the common misconceptions with workflows on getting confused on the send form versus send email, stuff like that. These are all very, very common things that I see as inhibitors for people getting started. And just very, very basic things can help clear that pathway for you so that you can go ahead and just get started. Again, workflows are the cherry on top. There's something special. They're the sprinkles. And it doesn't need to be a very, very complicated workflow. It just needs to be something that works for you. If you are looking in Dubsado's Facebook community and you see a whole bunch of people having these really intense workflows and blah, 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 that's wonderful for them, but it might not work for you. So don't get intimidated by other people's processes. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and answer some questions that Trevor hasn't answered. I'm sorry that we might be going over just a little bit. I know some of you do have other places to go, but if you have a few extra more minutes, hang around a little bit. I'm going to get through a few of these questions. I might not be able to tackle them all, but let me go ahead and start from the top here of what I am reading. So going from a lead capture form to a public proposal is something I would love to understand better. Can you explain? This is a wonderful question. So what this person is asking is, what does it look like to go from a lead capture form to a proposal? So essentially, remember, a lead capture form and a public proposal are the same thing. They act the same. They are going to both start a project. So you're not going to want to have a lead capture form and a public proposal, because what that is going to do is that is going to create 2 projects. It's going to create a project from the lead capture form and from the public proposal. So instead, what you're going to want to do is have the lead capture form. And if you want to send your client a proposal, make sure on your proposal let me go in the settings here, have this option turned off in your template. And this will just send the proposal to your client and it will act like any other form. So you don't want to have a lead capture form and a public proposal because that will create two projects. If you have this option on your forms turned off, it will just act like a questionnaire. It will act like a contract. It will just stay in that project and not create another project. All right. Next, can I upload a PDF into my form section and have that form automatically sent as an attachment in my email, in my workflow. Yes, I believe I briefly touched upon this. Oopsies, hold on, lost my page. I briefly touched upon this, but if you have PDFs that you have outside of Dubsado and you want to get them into Dubsado by on this questionnaire area. Click this little upload option and it will allow you to drop your PDF templates in the templates area here. And then when you are building your workflow, you're going to use the send form action, and that PDF will be delivered just like a form. It will go as an attachment to your clients. So just be sure to upload it here under the questionnaires area, and then you'll be able to use the send form action. All right, next. Is it possible to get the lead capture form information fields in the project versus adding it yourself? So this is a great question, and it goes with automating things. I believe this would be a great one to touch upon in our projects webinar. Give me 1 second. Keep losing my darn screen. Here it is. Okay. So if you want to have certain fields that your client fills out automatically get moved over to the project, this is getting really, really deep, really, really deep. So if you're following along, great. If you're not following along, we'll do another webinar about this. So don't get too scared here. So remember those smart fields I was talking about that you can use to customize and fill in information to make it seem super personal and a lot less stale? Those come from and feed into these questions that your client fill out on any form can be mapped into a section in Dubsado. So as soon as the client fills out their first name, it's going to pull that first name into the project. And there are more things. Let's say they fill out their email. Let's say you want them to fill out, let's add another short answer. Maybe their phone number. You want to ask them their phone number. And then I want it to map to the client's phone number because maybe I'm going to use that as a smart field in the email. And I want those items to show in the project. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Sorry, I'm moving back and forth through windows. What we're talking about is what the client fills out, and that lead capture form is going to show right here in that client information so that you don't have to manually then go and type those things in. That is all done through smart fields and mapping these questions so that once that question is filled out and it's mapped, it's going to come in here to the project. I would love to do another webinar about this because that is a very complex thing I just described in like 2 seconds. But great question. All right. I have so many leads in my inquiry phase. I can't tell you who has received the second follow-up email without going into each lead. This is a really great question. And congrats on having so many leads and so many people that are inquiring with you. And this is a great problem. And what you can do, and a great way to see where they're at in the workflow, is if you go to, hold on 1 sec. On the workflows tab, you can either find this in templates. Let's go into templates and workflows really fast. So go into templates and workflows. And let's say I want to see everyone who is on the 6-month coaching workflow, every lead that has filled it out and whatnot. I can see these are the projects that I have added this workflow to, and I can see where they are at in the phase. Yellow means it hasn't fired off yet. It's in progress. Green means it's fired off. I can see the status. I can see where they are in their workflow. So it gives you a little bit more of a zoomed back view of where people are at in this workflow and if they are where they are in the process. So I hope that helps with that. It does go on via workflow. So this is my 6-month coaching workflow. If I want to do my other workflow, I'd go into maybe general inquiry. I don't know. I don't have any on this one. So you have to do it per workflow. I would love to add an option later where we can see all workflows. So I got to that page. You can get here one of 2 ways. You can do it through the projects section and on that workflow, click workflow and then view. But you can also go into templates, click workflows, click the workflow that you would like to look at this zoom back view and click view. So again, that I went to templates, workflows, selected my workflow and clicked view. It's a little bit of knowledge that not everyone knows about. So I love sharing that little that little trick. Okay. A couple more questions and then I'll let you all go. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Let's see. When do you use the portal? Apply to portal versus project. Wonderful, wonderful question. So I think you saw this from, let's go into a workflow. Let's edit this workflow. What this person is talking about here is on a form, you do have the option to send an email and apply to the client portal. You can just apply it to a portal, or you can apply to project only. So for those of you that don't know, Dubsado allows for your clients to have their version of Dubsado, a client portal that they can view all the documents and emails and contracts and such that you have sent them. So it's great for you to be organized, but taking it one step further, you can be organized as well. You can have your clients be organized as well. So with that, you can send an email. Any form that you send your client will automatically get applied to the client portal. But maybe you don't, maybe you're sending a whole bunch of forms. This is a great little nugget for those of you that are sending a whole bunch of forms. Maybe you're sending a ton of forms to your client and you don't necessarily want them to get an email on the workflow for every single form that you send them. So this is what I love to do. This is my little trick if you're sending lots and lots of forms. You're going to click send form, pick the form that you want to apply, and then apply it. So what that apply to portal action is going to do that I selected there is just going to apply it to the portal. It's not going to send an email. Then let's say I want to send another form on here. Click send form. I want to apply that to the portal. I don't want to send them an email. I do that. I think I'm just sending the same form again and again, just for the sake of this webinar. Then I've already sent them maybe 5 forms. I'm now going to, let's see. I want to make sure that my workflow also activates the portal, because by default, when you start a project, the portal is deactivated. So I want to activate that portal. Done. And then I want to send them an email with their portal information. So then you're going to send the email. So basically, that's what those options are on there, is just giving you flexibility in case you don't want to send an email for every single form that you're going to send them. And maybe you add all of these forms to their client portal and you're like, hey, I added 5 forms in your portal. You're welcome for not sending you 5 emails. You can log into your portal this way. And then you can give them that information. All right. There's another option on there that allows you just to add it to the project, and it just adds it to the project. I'm not going to get into that too deep. I would possibly do that on the projects webinar that hopefully we'll do in a little bit. All right. Just a couple more questions. How does Force Now test it on a live client? Do you mean testing it on a fictitious client for testing flow to yourself? This is a wonderful question, and I should have clarified that. Yes, when you are testing out your workflows by clicking Force Now, it will send it to the client on that project. I should have stated, yes, create a project for yourself with your email, with your information, and apply that as you are the client. Maybe you fill out your lead capture form with your email in there and test it out. So you're definitely going to want to do that on a fake client and not your real client. You can use Force Now on a real client if you just want that workflow action to fire off right away. That Force Now area is not just for you to test. It's maybe if you want to get something out a little bit quicker. It just makes the action fire right away. How do you view the email that goes with the sent form in a workflow? When you are setting up a send form action in a workflow, when you add your template form that you want to send, you can also customize the email or choose from any canned email that you have right here and customize it however you want to. So when you have that, I'm in the send form action, and this is how I customize the email that goes with it. It's just scrolled down just a little bit on that send form action. All right. Can we be reminded of a client's birthday if it's written in his info? We've had this question come up a few times. There isn't a way for it to automatically remind you of the client's birthday. What I have seen people do, and it does require just a smidge of manual effort, is once you find out what the client's birthday is, you can add a few workflow actions or a few workflow to do. So let's go into this workflow. Let's say, let me just go into a project real fast because we're not going to be doing this on a template because this will be done customized. So let's say Joe Smith filled out his birthday. His birthday is July 24th. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to add an action. And I don't necessarily, maybe I don't want to send them an email. I want to maybe send them a card or something like that. So I am going to create a to-do, which to-dos get sent to myself. And I'm going to have this send fixed. So on July 24th, or maybe since I'm sending him a card, let's do it on the 17th at midnight. I'm going to say, remember, Joe's birthday is July 24th. So what this is going to do, it's going to send me an email because I have that checked, and it's going to create a to-do in my Dubsado account to send this client, Joe. I don't even need to type Joe. I can also use a smart field. I can add the project title so I know what project title it is, all that stuff. It's going to remind me that this client's birthday, Joe, but make sure to include his name in there so you know what client it's reminding you of. Their birthday is coming up. So that's a little manual process to do that, but it does do the trick. Would love to get an automatic process there in the future. All right. Two more questions. Yes, I know there's so many things. And if you do have any extra questions that maybe didn't get answered, we weren't able to get to them, please email us hello@dubsado.com or use the little green chat bubble. It's cut off a little bit on my screen, but use this chat bubble. Our customer care team is amazing and will always get back to you within a couple hours of you reaching out to us, especially if it's in business hours. Send us a message. We are here to help. We're happy to help answer whatever complicated, easy. If you feel it's a dumb question, it's not a dumb question if it helps you break through your processes. So please, if I haven't answered any, ask in the chat. So I'm going to get to two more, and then we are going to end this webinar. So how do you rename the leads to be broken down like you did? Great question. For example, awaiting consultation, consult booked. Okay, so how do you make it go in the funnel that you want it to go in? So say your lead capture your client fills out your lead capture form and you want it to go into the proper project status that you have, that proper funnel. This is what I'm talking about. Go to projects. You want it to go. So say as soon as my client fills out the lead capture form, I want it to go into this filled out inquiry form section. I don't want it to go anywhere else. So I'm going to go to templates and I'm going to go to forms. You're going to do this on the lead capture level. This is going to happen at the lead capture level. So you're going to go to your lead capture and go to settings. And as soon as this lead capture form is filled out, remember we are here. This is where you apply the workflow. This is where you apply those automatic actions. You can have it as soon as this lead capture form is filled out, it will go into whatever project status that you want. So I'm going to have, as soon as this lead capture form is filled out, it's going to go into my filled out inquiry form. You can even go one step further and you can customize your project title. So there's a lot of things that we can do. All right. Are there any plans to improve the forms so that rules can be added to make forms not as long or to make questions not visible if it's not applicable? This is a wonderful question, and this is called conditional logic. Conditional logic is something that we want to do on our Dubsado forms completely. It would change how you display your information. Conditional logic is that if then. So if a client answers yes on this question on the form, I want it to show these additional questions. If the client answers no on this, I don't want it to show certain questions. This is something that we will tackle. It's looking like it's going to be something that we tackle next year. Our development team currently is working so hard on rewriting our entire Dubsado system so that we can develop features and updates for you quicker. Running a software company and a tech company is so challenging, but it's a challenge that we love doing. And part of that is just building on infrastructure that we had built 7 years ago when we started Dubsado. So what this huge project that we're doing right now is rewriting our entire code base so that we can make sure we are developing for you quicker. So when we start in the new year and after we're done with this new project, it will allow us to deliver the updates for you without having to go back through old code and rewrite things as we're building features. Essentially, we're doing this because we want to make things faster for you. And we know that maybe in the last couple months or in the last couple year or so, we haven't been releasing updates as quick. And that's because we've been slowed down by our own code base, but we are fixing that and attacking that right away because we don't want this to be forever. We want to create new features for you because that is our favorite thing in delivering you updates that really improve your business, improve your workflows. So there's a lot coming down the Dubsado pipeline, but it might be quiet for the next few months in terms of the updates and new features on the new feature front because of that big code rewrite that we're doing, but it's only going to yield some amazing things afterwards. So we are just getting started. I'm very excited for that. So long story short, things like conditional logic will be coming as soon as that is done. So that will be a very exciting thing. It's also a very scary thing to do because pausing features for a little bit is something that we never want to do, but it's not a place that we're going to stay at very long. But it's gonna make some pretty amazing things come out of it. So sometimes you got to slow down to speed up. We're just recharging our batteries a little bit. All right. So I hope all of you found this really helpful. I'm going to share my screen real quickly. I do have a workflow webinar coming up here very soon. I think on Thursday, I have another webinar that's happening. And give me one sec while I get that shown for you. I'm going to be building a workflow live. I'm going to be building a live workflow. So let me share my screen. Why is it sharing the wrong one? All right, give me one second. You'll be able to share that QR code. And for some reason, it's not wanting to share the screen that I want to. So Kristen, can you put the link to our webinar that is coming up on Thursday? What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be building a workflow live with I believe it's a wedding photographer and videographer. She's going to be talking through her processes on the webinar, and I'm going to be writing down what those are, just what I told you to do. I'm going to be doing it with her, and I'm going to be building that workflow live with her so that you can see what it looks like to build a workflow. Even if you're not a photographer or if you're not a videographer, I think it'll be beneficial for you to just see how a workflow is built and how that process looks. There are many ways to build a workflow. Thanks, Kristen. There are many ways that you can build a workflow, and I think I would just love to show you how maybe I do it. And hopefully you can learn a lot from that, especially if you're a photographer or whatnot. So that should be a fun time. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. I hope that you found this webinar valuable. I hope that you can now go do your homework and write down your work or your processes so that you can identify what you are going to automate. So thank you everyone for coming. And if you have any ideas for any other workflow or any other webinars that you would like to do, email hello@Dubsado. And we can try to get some more webinars scheduled for you. So you all have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you all later. Thank you so much for coming.